It's such a pleasure and privilege to be here this evening to celebrate your induction into Beta Gamma Sigma. I realize that you've worked very hard to earn this achievement, and I'm humbled and honored to be here with all of you. Since I am a professor, you might expect me to share a few words of academic wisdom, but I want to focus on something far more important, the meaning of principled achievement. This is a term that was often used by our former dean, Larry Poley, and involves striving for excellence while making a difference in our world. When I arrived on this beautiful historic campus in the fall of 2014, I was thrilled to be here, as it had been a lifelong dream of mine to become a part of the William & Mary tribe. I often joke that William & Mary does not just attract type A personalities. We attract type AA and type AAA personalities, just like me and you. However, in my first 2 weeks on the job, my office hours were filled with students that did not necessarily want to discuss marketing assignments, but rather mental health issues, which was heartbreaking to me. How could these students with so much talent and potential feel so alone in their struggles? And as the semester progressed, the situation became even worse. We had 4 student deaths that year, and I felt so helpless. But then I realized that I still had the power of my voice to let students know that I was there to support them, even if it was just a quick conversation or a comforting hug. You see, principled achievement can begin with something as simple as a smile or a kind word. As Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us, you do not need to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. However, it was not until my own college experience that I came to that realization. I had always been relatively smart and thought that hard work would prevail, and those that did not succeed must not have worked hard enough. I was so naive to recognize that life happens, and we do not always have control of how it happens. Honestly, my college years were the hardest of my life, and that certainly was not part of my plan. But the fact that I was fortunate enough to become the first woman in my family to earn a college degree meant that I was also a part of the small 6.7% of the population in this world with a college degree. And you are among the most fortunate, because you are earning your degree from the College of William & Mary. So we need to keep in mind that to whom much is given, much is expected. And we cannot lose sight of everyday blessings around us. We have the power to change the world, not only with excellence in education, but with principled achievement. And sometimes that does not always take the form that we expected. When I was growing up, the most popular show on children's television was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers made every child feel as though they had a friend in him. And he just so happened to be born in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, where my previous college, St. Vincent College, was located. So I had the privilege of supporting the launch of the Fred Rogers Center when I was there. And one of my very favorite stories about Fred Rogers was when he was pursuing his graduate studies at seminary school. He was required to hear a variety of preachers, so on Sundays, he would visit different churches. And one week, he experienced, in his words, the most poorly crafted sermon he had ever heard. Virtually everything the pastor said went against what Mr. Rogers had learned about preaching in seminary school. For this particular sermon, a friend had attended the service with him. And when he turned to her at the end of the service, he saw tears streaming down her cheeks. Then she looked at him and said, "That was exactly what I needed to hear." Which, of course, is not at all what he expected. But Fred Rogers came to understand that the difference between their reactions had little to do with the sermon and everything to do with each of their attitudes. He had come in judgment, but she had come in need. Even though you are honors graduates at the very top of your class, There will be times in life when you might need to take a step back and consider different perspectives. So if you leave this evening and remember just 2 words, I hope they will be grace and gratitude. Several years ago, I heard an amazing speech by a mathematician, Francis Su, on the lesson of grace in teaching. And as I listened to his words, I immediately felt a familiar tone to his story. He tells of the time when he was a struggling student, and his advisor actually said to him, "You don't have what it takes to be a successful mathematician." Well, I would have argued that his advisor might not have what it takes to be a successful teacher, but as you can imagine, it was devastating to hear this criticism. So he decided to change advisors, and he chose a faculty member who had simply been kind to him years before and had bought him a cup of coffee when his mother had died. And he changed advisors even though that meant he had to completely start over with his research. And he said that only in hindsight did he realize why he had gravitated towards his new advisor. It's because his new advisor showed him grace. The lesson of grace is that your accomplishments are not what make you a worthy human being. You learn this lesson when someone gives you grace, good things you didn't earn or deserve, but you're receiving them anyway. And I wholeheartedly agree with him when he said, I have to learn that lesson over and over again. You can have worthiness apart from your performance. You can have dignity independent of achievements. Your identity should not only be rooted in accomplishments. Grace seems simple, but it's such a deep concept. And once you recognize it, you begin to see it everywhere. As a marketing professor, I will admit that sometimes I am desperately at odds with the notions of consumerism and commercialization that my discipline seems to propagate. Grace and gratitude are typically not found in advertising campaigns. However, as a marketer, I also understand the power of communication, and I sincerely believe that each of us has the power to use our words and actions to express gratitude and contribute to a greater good and live a life of principled achievement. In the end, none of us are going to leave this earth with the latest gadget or the biggest wallet, but I hope that we will leave with the brightest spirits that will continue to live on through all those that we have touched. David Brooks, a columnist with the New York Times, has said that the noise of shallow and fast communications makes it harder to hear the quiet sounds that emanate from the depths. How can we even focus our attention? And if we cannot focus our attention, how can we commit to something or explore life beyond the surface? He explains that what a wise person teaches is the smallest part of what they give. The wholeness of their life and the way they go about it in the smallest details is what gets transmitted. The message is the person, perfected over a lifetime of effort that was set in motion by yet another wise person, now hidden by the dim mist of time. Life is much bigger than we think. Cause and effect are intertwined in a vast moral structure that keep pushing us to do better, become better, even when we dwell in the most painful darkness. I want to close my comments this evening with a quote from Leo Buscaglia. He was a professor at USC, and he taught a course called Love 1A. I actually found his book, Living, Loving, and Learning, one night during my freshman year of college when I was severely depressed and decided to roam the stacks of the library. And nearly 40 years later, his words continue to be my guiding light to principled achievement. He said, too often, we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. Don't spend your precious time asking, why isn't the world a better place? It will only be time wasted. The question to ask is, how can I make it better? To that, there is an answer. Thank you.